Hello and welcome back to the Simplifiers podcast, where we take topics in business and in life and simplify them. And friends, I'm so excited to talk about today's topic because I feel like anytime I've ever listened to episodes talking about the big R word, resiliency, it's a lot of and it's a lot of grit and fighting and muscling through and, getting through to the other side. And actually, I want to tackle the topic of building resilience in your life, both personally and professionally, in kind of a different way. I want to talk about joy. I want to talk about how we can cultivate joy in our work and in our life, and how the path is actually through building resiliency. So I had to find the right expert who could tackle this conversation just the right way with me. And her name is Dr. Eva Selhub. She's an internationally recognized expert, a physician, speaker, an executive leadership and performance coach, and she's focused all her work on stress, resilience, and integrative medicine. Dr. Selhub served as the instructor of medicine at Harvard Medical School. And her latest book, would you believe, Resilience for Dummies, helps to translate complex information into practical and usable knowledge that any individual can access. That's the essence of simplifying. Now, her work has been featured in the New York Times, USA Today, Self, Shape, Fitness, and the Dr. Oz Show, plus a whole lot more. So I'm imagining you'll recognize her as soon as she speaks. I'd like to welcome to the Simplifiers podcast, Dr. Eva Selhub. Hey, Dr. Eva.
Hey. Thanks for having me.
So glad you're here. And I am so excited to talk about resiliency, which for some people will be like, oh, I don't know if I want to cover this topic. It's a bit heavy, isn't it? Oof. I just barely...
Well, not the way I teach it.
Exactly. I just barely survived 2020. Now we're talking about resiliency. So, okay. Break it all down for us. How, first off, would you define resilience, especially in the lens of an entrepreneur?
Well, in general, we want to think about resilience. The definition, right, is to be able to meet adversity, which we will, because that's life, and to be able to bounce back to original form. So that's the original definition, if you will. If you look it up, that's what you'll find. Being able to, the elasticity, the ability to be able to come back into wherever you were before, no matter what hit you. I sort of liken it to, you've got sort of two drinking utensils in front of you, two cups, right? One cup is made from rubber. The other cup is made from glass. And if you're like me, you're not paying attention. Your hand kind of does a swipe and they both fall off the desk,
right, hitting
the ground. And it's the same distance off the desk, the same speed with which they fall, but one of them breaks and the other one bounces. The other one's usable, and the other one is no longer usable. And the resilience clearly is the rubber cup. It's the being able to bounce back and then be able to still be usable in its original form. We want to take that also to the next level, is if we really look at true resilience, if you want to look at the folks that write the grit and all that stuff that you were mentioning, is they come back stronger.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
They come back better. We look at, especially with regard to entrepreneurship, and anyone who's the real successful entrepreneurs are people that failed several times before. Right. And then they met, really meet people that were just all of a sudden successful. They had a lot of setbacks first. But the resilient person, right, they fall several times, but they bounce back. And it's the bounce back factor that is actually what constitutes resilience. How well do I bounce back? And when I make that fall, how do I use it as an opportunity? And how do I look at that? Do I look at this as a situation where, I've failed again? Life is horrible, I'm being punished, or I'm never going to make it? Or is it, okay, all right, that hurt, but okay, how's this an opportunity for growth and learning? And how's an opportunity, and I take it that step further, is how's an opportunity for me to learn more about myself so that I can live in joy? Because most of us are entrepreneurs, I am anyway, because I couldn't stand working for someone else. I didn't like the structure. I didn't like somebody telling me what to do or yelling at me if I wasn't doing something right. I wanted to be creative. I wanted to explore and do my own thing. And that was worth the risk of not having the steady income.
Yeah.
Right. And so, so that takes a certain amount of of grit, a certain amount of risk that you're just saying, I just don't want to live like this. I don't want to do like this. So it's the idea of how am I going to learn about myself to what brings me joy, so that, you can call it, pay for play if you like. It's like I don't do anything unless it's, it's playful for me. If I'm not in joy, then I'm not going to do it. And so, yes, not everything's going to be joyful, but if the result is not bringing you a state of joy, then you're not that bouncing cup.
Yeah.
You're the glass breaking.
Yeah. And it's so much harder to bounce back if you are shattered in a million pieces on the ground. I mean, it makes perfect sense. It's interesting. Your definition there really sparked a memory in me. I took part in a business incubator and accelerator program in England about 5 years ago or so now. And it was there where I was introduced to the concept of lean business methodology. And when in that is, if you look at your business in the eye and scope of just creating hypotheses, testing those hypotheses out into the marketplace. Does it succeed or does it fail gloriously? Do your clients and customers buy the thing or do they not? Those kinds of things. And then when you come back and you say, okay, well, that was a test. And what did we learn from that test? Everything that was learning, what could have seemed like a glorious blunder, actually was very fruitful information. And in learning that process of test, refine, validate, test, refine and validate, it does become a playful process. And I guess in essence is a bit of resiliency as well, because you kind of have to have a bit of thick skin as an entrepreneur. When you put your thing out there that you're like, oh my God, this is it. This is what people want and need and love. And oh my God, I've solved the ultimate problem. And you put it out there and the price is wrong. Or the timing is way off.
Is wrong.
Or the messaging is not in their voice, but it's in a whole bunch of technical jargon and things, went whoosh, right over their head. Like the learning is the most fruitful part of the process. What do you think?
Well, it absolutely is. And I think the big challenge for us, and I certainly learned this, I left my practice in 2002, but I've also started doing this stuff on my own since 1997. So I've been doing this for quite some time, and I've probably had more failures, more setbacks than I'd like to count. Right. The first book I wrote came out during the economic collapse. You can imagine in 2009 when the bookstores disappeared. Right. So, and here's my labor of love, and I'm thinking I'm finally going to get recognized, and I'll be able to go on all these speaking tours, and I'm thinking this, visions of grandeur, and for my lesson, but the lesson for me, so the lesson that we're gaining. And this is sort of what I want to talk about. This, it's so much deeper than just, let's make money or let's be successful with whatever product I'm creating.
Right.
It's a spiritual journey.
Yeah.
Right. So for me, it was on a deeper level of knowing my value and not writing my value according to what I've accomplished and being recognized or making money or whatever that is. And so for me, it was almost as if until I understood that my value exists because I exist, not because of what I do, then I was going to keep failing. And the minute that changed, the minute I went into that alignment of light and joy and knowing that because I exist, I can do, because of my value, I can do things, and that my doing is the expression of my light and my joy, that's when success really sort of started coming. In the way we term success. But for me, I'm already successful because I'm happy.
Yeah.
Right?
Well, and you're absolutely
so that's
right.
The lessons. They're constantly coming.
You're having to reprogram any sort of mindset anchors. That's what I like to call them. That just hold you down and hold you stuck. And sometimes these mindset anchors were dropped down by unpresuming people who maybe were mentors or previous bosses or whoever, maybe even your mother. Who knows?
Or parents, exactly.
Right? That have said something to you and you have hooked onto as either an identity anchor or as a truth anchor. This is how the world works. This is how business works. And it may have served you 5, 10, 15 years ago, but is no longer serving you now. And it sounds like in your book and in your work, it all does boil down to mindset, doesn't it? Like reprogramming and releasing some of those angers and realizing what's actually happening behind the Wizard of Oz curtain, right?
That's right. It's releasing those limiting beliefs, and you're right. The limiting beliefs can be, from a boss. It could be from a parent, but a lot of it's cultural, right? As women, right? We were property until very recently.
It's insane.
Okay, I mean, it's mind-boggling. Until in the past 100 years, we belonged to the men. I mean, I believe somebody explained this to me. I'm not an expert in this, but the part of the Bible is that thou shalt not covet your neighbor's wife or whatever. It's not about adultery. It's about property. Don't covet my property. So culturally, it's been ingrained in us, especially as women, for thousands of years. And it's a limiting belief that is so deep in us that it's, like I said, you have to go on a deeper level to release it, to know that I am value. I am here, and it's my light that is going to shine through the way I express myself, whether it's through my the way, I am with my family and my relationships, or the way I am with my work. And for most of us who are entrepreneurs, a lot of it is through our work. It's just how we express our joy and our love and our creativity. Yeah. And if we take back that ownership, right, and use those failures are a way of sort of kind of a feedback, right, a feedback system of saying, take a look at yourself, take a look at yourself, take a look at yourself, fall back in love with yourself, change your mindset, get rid of the limiting beliefs. And as we do that, life unfolds in a much more beautiful way, and you find that you now become pliant. So what am I talking about? The glass versus the rubber and resilience. Resiliency is about being pliant. It's about being able to, it's like if you think of Tai Chi or Qigong, when you see them moving those movements, it's about being able to work with the energy, to absorb the negative energy, transmute it, and bring it back out in a positive way, right? So everything in life is really about being able to move with that flexibility, that pliability. Even your blood vessels, right? When we're babies, there's what's called heart rate variability. That means the levels from when it's high to it's low are really big, these big peaks and valleys. And when we get older, it starts flatlining, literally, as we start losing flexibility with our muscles, our bones, our arteries. But that doesn't need to happen, right? So being able to stay flexible, pliable, open, giving, receiving, taking, whatever, that's a mindset. It's a spiritual state. It's a physical state. It's, all these things that we can then, be in that life in that pliant way and be more like that rubber and learn and grow in a continuous fashion. And that's why for me, resilience isn't so much about grit. It's more about that fluidity, that joy, that love, that peace.
Yeah, that's what immediately came to mind as you described that, is like a weeping willow tree, one that is full of flow. And, we talk about being in flow in your work. It's that time where, time itself becomes limitless. The creative juices are flowing and things are just working, and you're knocking out all the things and you're really lit up from inside. Like, that's the flow state. That's what we want to achieve in our work and in our personal life as well. I want to go back to something you said earlier before I forget. And I think that this is a tricky one to grapple, especially as a female entrepreneur, is on the one hand, you hear in kind of mainstream media the concept of, if you are a small business owner, whether it's a business that you're looking to scale and then sell off one day, or, a lifestyle business, something that you've built around your life that was maybe just you and a handful of VAs. There is a mainstream media message out that says, you need to be the face of your brand. You're a personal brand, so be in the spotlight. This is your business is you, ... But then equally on the other side, and what I hear you say here is that I think there's also some truth in not establishing your entire identity, the 100% of the pie, on your business, because I think there is real danger there and say, if something does fail gloriously, then there is that internal data point to you of, well, I have failed gloriously. What are your thoughts
That's right.
there? Those are very conflicting messages that I think a lot of our listeners are dealing with.
Well, again, I think you hit it right on the nail, and that's what I was saying from before. If you set up your sense of value, that if it's predicated on anything external,
Yeah.
whether even it's the way you look, your body,
Yep.
right? Or it could be your business, or it could be whether or not you have a happy marriage or whatever relationship, or whether or not you have kids. You know, there's a lot of single people out there, or divorcees, or single mothers, or whatever. And, you know, that society looks like, oh, well, that's not perfect. That's not how it's supposed to be. So if you gauge your sense of value according to anything external, that can break. Mm-hmm. And if that breaks, like I said, your body, you get ages. It gets sick. I mean, these are things that happen. So if your sense of value is predicated on the external, it's going to end up in disappointment.
Yeah.
If you work on knowing your value as a being that exists, I'm valuable because I exist. Now, do a little exercise with you because it's super interesting. I did it with a client yesterday, and she had like this huge epiphany. Like she finally got what I was been talking about for 2 years. That when we know our value, everything else is just an expression of that.
Yeah.
Right. So your business is an expression of who you are. It's not who you are.
Yep.
Right. So everything it's how do I shine my light? And the more aligned I am, if you think about, like, imagine that light is beaming through us all the time, right? Like there's a beam of light coming from the heavens and it's shining through your body, and your soul is able to then express its light out into the world because, you know, all your windows are open.
Yeah.
Okay. But if you're misaligned and you don't know your value, the shades are down. So your light's not shining. It shines every once in a while when you're in that flow, or when you're happy, or you're in love, or you think somebody else is making you feel that way, but nobody's making you feel that way. You have access to it yourself. Yeah. So when you are aligned and know your value, the window shades are open, you're shining your light. And guess what? You're making it possible for somebody else to find their light switch because your light is so bright.
Yeah. Right?
So it's knowing your value from within, and not putting all your sense of value in what you do. And that's complicated because we put so much heart and soul into what we do. And I think it's an interesting thing for me, again, because when I started writing books and thinking I need to be visible and none of that was working. And I hate it. I'm a very private person, actually. I don't want to put my whole life. I don't want to sell me. I sell the concept. I don't want to sell me. And I had a really hard time with it until I started realizing, oh, I just need to influence the influencer. I don't need to be that person who's, has 1 million followers. I need to influence the person who has 1 million followers.
Right.
And because that's, where my light wants to shine. And so when I was figuring that out, things started moving in a much easier way. And I also hired people to help me with social media. And I found ways that, because that wasn't aligned with feeling good for me. Some people really enjoy it. I hate it. So I said, okay, this is not aligned for me, even though I know it's something that entrepreneur needs to do. So it's like when you start bringing that locus of control back into the self, into understanding what it means to be in that place of alignment, of self-love, self-knowing, of connection to something higher than you, right? Then we can start gauging the outside and saying, does this match? Does this not match?
Well, and I can
feel good. Not feel good.
I can imagine that, like you say, bringing the locus of self-control back into you, that the things that the validation that you need and desire, you give yourself. It's not predicated on your customers, your partner, your children, anybody outside of you. And I think that is a shift towards the positive that is worth experimenting with today, this week, this month, and just see how that feels different. I think that's where joy starts to flow more. And it's not, I want to be very clear in saying this, it's not saying, well, it's just me, myself, and I don't need anybody else out there in the world. It's like taking that pressure off of other people to validate you, to give you something that you feel you need and or deserve, right?
Exactly.
Does this spin into, I'm just thinking now, this likely spins into when people fall into kind of a martyrdom or a victim's mindset. When things start to spiral out of the control and they go, wow, I'm just so busy right now because everybody's eating up all my time and people aren't buying my thing and da 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 da. Like, how do we avoid the victim's mindset then?
Right. Well, the point is that when you know the value of self and you have that state of life is an opportunity for me, right? So you have a choice, right? The choice is life happening to me or is it happening with me?
Yeah.
Right. And there's levels. Some people say it's happening for me, but that's still like reward punishment kind of mindset, right? As opposed to it's happening with me. I am the co-creator of my life, right? And we all know when you're in a good mood, when you wake up in a good mood versus you wake up in a bad mood, you could have the same thing that happens that day, but the trajectory of what happens after that will be very different, right? So if I'm in a bad mood and I'm just like looking down and grumpy and blah, 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 and like, and I'm just not paying attention. I just go to work and I'm grumpy and blah, 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 and, angry at the person who didn't keep the door open for me. And just my whole day is going to suck. And I'm not going to actually make really good decisions because my brain's locked down. Yeah. That's what happens with the stress response. I don't have access to creative thinking, problem solving, all that kind of stuff. And I'm probably not going to make some really good decisions and maybe have some arguments with my colleagues or whatever that is.
Right.
The flip side is I wake up in a good mood. Same thing, same commute to work, all that kind of stuff. But I'm like appreciating, looking around, and oh my goodness, there's a road sign that I just look at, and it puts an idea in my head, and I'm like running to work now because I have this whole great idea of how to because I just saw something on a sign. Yeah. Right. Yeah. Just some sign that triggered an idea.
Yeah.
So same day, but I was just in a bad mood. Right. And so when you're in a bad mood, when you're victimized, you contract. The window shades come down. You can't see and you can't express. When I'm in a more positive state, when I'm in a state of appreciation or gratitude or awareness or thinking of life as an opportunity, when I change that mindset to what you can call it the growth mindset, if you like, versus the limited mindset, then I think like opportunities everywhere.
Right.
Then my light is shining and I can see. Right. My senses are opening to gaining the information that's also going to allow me to be innovative and creative and to make better decisions and have better relationships and communicate better, which means more people are going to help me. And I'm no longer victimized. Right. And I know when to say no because it doesn't feel right. It doesn't feel good. I'm feeling tired. So I'm going to say no. So the more you're connected to self, that's why the umbrella for all of this is self-awareness. When I'm connected to self, and what I do is I bring people back to paying attention to the body. Yeah. How does my body feel? Does it feel tired? Does it feel contracted? Does it feel expansive? Am I feeling overwhelmed? Because if I am, then I need to take care of self first. So, put your mask on first, then take care of others. Because as women, our tendency is to take care of others. Yeah. Fine. But fill up your gas tank first.
And then you're depleted if you do take care of others. And, then there's that resentment of like, oh my God, I worked 12 hours today and I've got this whole inbox of emails that I haven't been able to respond to. And, right? It's a cyclical cycle. And I as you were speaking, I just thought, both sides feed onto each other. So when I've had particularly horrible, crappy days, for whatever reason, it does feed unto itself. So the 1,000 daily choices that I have to make, if I'm in a crappy mood and I am contracted, like you say, I might also make poor decisions on what I eat for lunch that day, or, skip the water and go straight to the wine at 5 o'clock, or, stay up super late to watch something on Netflix that isn't fulfilling and sacrificing my sleep. It's causing that pattern to perpetuate. And then equally, when I am in a good mood and I'm making my 1,000 daily choices and I'm eating vegetables instead of gross stuff and I'm drinking lots of water, my body language changes. I show up to meetings differently. people go, oh, there's something going on with her. I want to know more. I want to work on projects with her. I want to ba 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 ba. And
I want to have what she's having.
yes, yes. And so,
Yep.
I guess it comes back to me of thinking, well, how do we control the very first thought we have in the morning? Like, how do we control that very first choice that we pop up? And I guess that comes back a lot to how high performance athletes work, right? Like they train every single day, whether it's a race season or a not race season. The discipline behind that. Can you talk to me a little bit about that? How we can, build that muscle of discipline and resilience through our mindset work?
Absolutely. By the way, all of this is in the book.
Good.
Cover all of these subjects.
Yes.
And I just want to sort of step back. I'm going to answer that question. I just want to step back to just talk a little bit about what we call maladaptive behaviors. So a maladaptive behavior is I'm anxious and therefore I'm going to eat a pint of ice cream because it's going to help soothe my nerves, versus I'm hungry and I eat. So I'm hungry, physically hungry, and I'm eating is actually an adaptive coping modality, because it's actually going to help me survive and live a healthy and full life, as opposed to maladaptive coping, which is helping me cope, but it's actually not helping me become healthier. It's actually hurting me in the long run. And so we have when our brain is developing earlier in life, we don't know why we're feeling the way we're feeling. We just know we don't feel good. And we know that when I do this behavior, that bad feeling goes away. So it becomes our coping modality. So whether it's turning to food or turning to work, or turning to helping people, because I know when I help somebody, I feel more valued and makes that bad feeling go away. Right. So the bad feeling could be like anxiety, or could be just mean I'm not feeling loved and valued. And so we find that when I do this, I feel validated, I feel valued. And so and remember, that's happening before our intellectual brain is fully developed. So your behavior patterns and your habits are forming, way before you actually understand why. And so when you're stressed, you're going to fall back to the coping modalities that have helped you get this far. So that's why, all these self-help books just sit on shelves and they don't really work, because you have to actually look, if you're going to go outside and it's cold, you're going to shiver unless you reset the thermostat. Right. So the reprogramming is resetting the thermostat to become self-aware when it's off, when the light is shutting off, so that I can do what I need to do to get it back on. And it's about self-love and self-care. And so self-discipline is really about self-love. It's not about restriction. It's not about diets. It's not about shoulding or you have to. It's about I love myself so much that I'm going to take care of myself in this way. And it's about being aware, like, oh, I'm in a bad mood. So it's not it's bad that I'm in a bad mood. Oh, I'm in a bad mood. That means my gas tank is on empty. I need to fill up. Yeah. What do I need to do to take care of myself to alleviate this feeling? Yeah. I didn't get enough sleep. Okay. So it doesn't mean go drink caffeine. It means maybe meditate a little bit to nurture yourself. Maybe it means go take a bath. Maybe go get a massage. Maybe it means, I need to call my best friend and get a good laugh. Yeah. So that's the whole tools in the toolbox are what are the different modalities that we have available to us to help change our vibrational energy. So if I'm waking up in a low vibration, that's kind of the way I like to think of it. Like high vibration, I'm shining my light, I'm in the flow. Low vibration, I'm contracted and in a fetal position, right? Like the worst to the best. Yeah. And you're just going to it's going to vary throughout the day. It's going to vary depending on what's happening in the world. Like we're not isolated beings. It's going to every, moment is a different moment. So the practice of mindfulness, to be aware and present in the present moment, non-judgmentally, throw in a little bit of appreciation for, I'm in a bad mood. It's an opportunity to delve deeper as to why, right? Yeah. What can I learn more about myself? What can I learn more about my condition? As opposed to just letting your emotions drive your behavior. Take a moment to use your emotions to guide you how to take care of yourself. So wake up in the morning and luxuriate, take a mindful waking up, oh, I'm so lucky to be under this, warm, plush bed, and let me feel the earth underneath my feet as I wake up. And taking our time to be in that place of appreciation and to shift our mindset will then allow us to move into a place of more optimistic or positive way of thinking. And that then ignites the brain, allows us to connect to lateral thinking in the prefrontal cortex, allows us to then jump into better behaviors, modalities. But if we stay in the contracted state, in the 5-year-old state, you're going to go to the coping modalities that have always worked.
Right.
And it's just like trying to stop a shiver when it's cold outside.
Right.
Not going to happen.
Right.
You can't wrong yourself for being human, in other words.
Right.
It's just what's going to happen.
And if you're asking your 5-year-old how to solve what they're feeling, guess what's going to come up? A 5-year-old solution: sugar, energy drink.
Right.
We need fast food and we need it now. Whatever those
Right.
answers
Or
are.
throw a tantrum.
Yeah, exactly. I think it's interesting. Something that I have been practicing over the last year and a bit, especially during the pandemic, when a lot of the things that I would seek for comfort, whether it's, getting together with friends or otherwise that just are no longer available during lockdown. What I have found is I had to shift those go-to things so that it isn't the fridge. It isn't the pint of ice cream. And for me, it's as simple as changing the scenery. So if I'm sitting at my desk, doom scrolling whatever social media platform, not getting anything done, feeling worse and worse and worse as time goes on, just simply getting up from my desk, shutting the laptop, and taking a 10-minute walk outside. If you have some forest or the woods nearby, the power of stillness, not taking your headphones with you, but just gentle stillness and being grounded in nature just makes a huge difference. And every time in my head, I would I'd hear the negative Nancy voice of like, oh, this is going to take too long, or oh, this is going to take you off chart or off course of what you're trying to do, and oh, you don't have any time for that in your busy schedule. But 10 minutes is really all I needed. Like, I don't need this, 2-hour hike somewhere. So I just encourage you, if you are feeling that way today, or if any of this resonates with you, press pause. We'll be here. Go take a walk. Get your feet out into the grass. Take your shoes off if you're brave, and ground yourself. I think there's power in those simple switching the scenery.
Well, nature is a big thing. I write about this in this book and all my other books. Even we wrote a book called Your Brain on Nature. So this is a big thing for me and the research where we know that. And look, we come from nature. We're not meant to be in front of screens. The screen time itself actually causes depression, anxiety, and all kinds of issues. So you really just need 10 to 20 minutes a day of nature. But even if you have plants in the room, there's all different kinds of ways. But the thing about nature is that it not only improves your immune system and it's beautiful, but it allows us to start being mindful, right? Be in that feeling of that connection to something larger than just us, and feel that sort of that expansiveness. And this is the thing about when people, I work with so many people, a lot of high-end executives, and, they're efficient, they've got a lot on their plate. And I think, well, how much are you getting done when you're stressed?
Yeah.
You're making mistakes. You're going over something over and over and over again. You're not making decisions, and you can't actually think clearly. Yeah. So you're wasting a lot of time. And by creating time distraction, so we actually build in the time distraction to whether it's stretching, doing a quick 2-minute meditation, taking a walk out in nature, whatever it may be, then your ability to focus and then really get stuff done quadruples, quintuples. So you're actually, more efficient, more capable, more productive when you take that time out.
So in your book, you've got 6 pillars of resilience. Can you walk us through those just very high level? And then I want to take a deep dive, if we've got time, into emotional equilibrium.
Mm-hmm. Well, that's the second pillar. The first pillar is physical vitality. So I think that sort of speaks for itself. If the virus comes through, you want to be in pretty good shape to begin with, so that, it might knock you down a little bit, but you're bounced back. So physical vitality. So it covers all the different facets that allow our physical health. I'm a medical doctor, so that's also like the background.
Yes.
So, whether it's, different exercise, nutrition, sleep, meditation, what have you. So it's sort of building that infrastructure to increase physical vitality. Yep. The second one is emotional equilibrium. Mm-hmm. So as I've mentioned, when your negative emotions take over, we go into a contracted state, and it also catapults limited belief systems and behavior patterns that are maladaptive and not conducive to being able to bounce back. and push us into that victim mindset.
Yeah.
So when you create that emotional equilibrium, we can do that through meditation, mindfulness, self-awareness. It goes through different types of exercises of how to quiet the mind and quiet the emotions, so then we get access to a more positive state of mind. So there's just different techniques that we can go about doing that. And again, giving our emotions a different job description. They're not bad. Being angry isn't bad. Being fearful isn't bad. It's making you a bad person. It makes you human. Yeah. And it's the way your body's letting you know that you're hungry. Right? It's just like hunger is letting you know you need food. Your emotions are letting you know you need something, or something's being triggered. So either A, you're out of balance, or B, it's an opportunity to heal something old. Like your emotions are letting you know about something that's coming from your past. It's coming forward into your present, that it's an opportunity for you to heal.
And as
an old memory.
Yeah. And as you said earlier, it's first step is self-awareness. But I think as well, it's like acknowledging and doing something about it. Because I think so many times we do get the triggers, or we see them pop up and we go, push it down, push it down later, or we numb it with something, and it just gets bigger and bigger and bigger. Yeah.
Well, that's what creates the rigidity, right? Because we're not listening, we're not paying attention, we're not taking the energy and transmuting it with stuffing. So if you imagine, I was saying, that light beam coming down, and we've spent our life stuffing that light, because that light actually is showing us where the pain is, and we don't want to feel pain. And so if we say, well, a lot of the point of my work is to build the light. A lot of, like, first book was called The Love Response, which is, to find that love within ourselves. And as we build that light, that love, that cushion within us, we can actually then be better able to handle, look at, and manage that pain. So, and that's what then allows us to do in that, the third pillar, which is mental clarity and toughness, which is where the grit comes in.
Yep.
Where the ability to look at something as a victor rather than a victim, to look at something and change our mindset as to, rather than this is a horrible situation where I failed, it's an opportunity for growth and learning.
Yep.
So that's the third pillar. Fourth pillar is spiritual connection. Just understanding that we are not alone, we don't exist on our own, and that we're connected to something much larger than self, and the different ways that we can connect to our sense of spirituality, whether it's through a religious belief or through nature or meditation or what have you. So it covers that. The fifth pillar is our relationships, our close personal relationships, right? The looking at the relationships and saying how they are they giving and receiving, or is it just giving and not receiving? And knowing that we're social beings, we have an innate desire to belong, just like our innate desire to eat. We have a desire to belong and to feel loved and valued, and to be examining those relationships and knowing that first relationship is the relationship with yourself.
Yes.
So that's part of that. And then the sixth pillar is taking that a step further and bringing it into the concept of community and leadership, understanding that we're social beings. We're meant to live in groups. We could not survive in the wilderness. Our ancestors couldn't without that sort of that evolution of the community and the group, and building those communities, cultivating stronger communities, but also understanding your influence in that community. That all of us have an influence. The butterfly has an influence 1,000 miles away on how you feel right now. So you're either a pebble or you're a boulder, but either way, you're going to create ripples in the water, and that's going to influence other people. So it's not only just being part of a community, but it's knowing like who I am as a leader within this community. I don't mean like you have to be the CEO of something, but you're a leader nonetheless because you have influence. So taking that into account, and it's looking at how do we work together? How do we build those social bonds? And how do I, what can I do best knowing the influence I have on others? The more I take care of myself, the bigger the influence I have on others in a positive way. So those are the 6 pillars.
Yeah. And when you list all 6 pillars, I mean, that is a joy-filled life. That is a life that I want to live. I think that everyone that listens to this podcast wants and wants to grow and cultivate. And some of those pillars you may be really good at. You feel connected. You are a leader in your local community. And others, well, you're like, my physical vitality, my light is a little bit dim right now. And that's okay. And I think that coming back to a book like yours, Resilience for Dummies, helps people to to, take an aspect of one pillar and say, what am I going to focus on for the next 30 days to bring this one notch higher? And,
Right.
not big sweeping changes, or maybe that's what you need. But, just taking that bit by bit, step by step, and making a change.
Well, I think, and I want to also say, like, one of the nice things about the For Dummies series, because a lot of my books, you sort of have to, you read one chapter in order to be able to do the next chapter. And the way they're designed is you can pick it up and open up into any page and it will make sense on its own.
Brilliant.
So that's how they're written. So you don't have to read like from this part to this part for this part to make sense. So that's,
Perfect.
I mean, I always recommend that, but you don't need to. You can just open up to any chapter and it should be able to sort of stand on its own for you.
Yeah, I love that. And that's so great. Especially in now and day and age, we all have 80 bazillion tasks on our to-do list. And sometimes we just need to read something very quickly to spin us in the right direction, to change our mindset, or to spark a new idea. Now, I feel like this question that I'm about to ask you is a bit of a loaded gun, and maybe I need to have you back for a part 2 to really dive into it. But I'm going to go ahead and ask you the question about stress. Now, I know you've written a couple of books on stress already. So stress is inevitable, right? But how do we actually use stress to our advantage in business?
Well, let's reframe that a little bit.
Yeah.
It's how do I use stress to my advantage all of the time?
Yeah.
Okay. So it's not just business. It's all of the time. Stress is a part of life. Now let's first understand the definition of stress, because I think what the problem for most people is that they give it, so that it has a bad rap. Okay. By definition, stress is all it means is that a state of balance is being challenged. That's it. So hunger is actually a stress. Being cold is a stress. And get this, wanting more information is a stress, right? So the state of balance is I'm good. And they're like, I wonder how to make stress, use it to my advantage. That's a stress. The not knowing how to use stress to your advantage is a stress. And what is it doing? It's catapulting. It's motivating you to go find out. So without stress, you wouldn't be motivated. There would be no action. You wouldn't feed yourself. You wouldn't put on something warm. You wouldn't want to innovate. You wouldn't want to create. You wouldn't want to make the world a better place. You'd be inert and you'd be dead. So stress is a wonderful thing in that respect. Without it, we would not be who we are, and we would be bored or actually really just dead, basically, because we wouldn't be motivated or act on any reason to improve or get better or to adapt. Right. So life is constantly changing. The earth, the universe, the nature, it's constantly, there's adversity. And we have a built-in mechanism. We're hardwired to be able to adapt to that stress through a stress response. So the brain has what we call messengers that bring messages from the outside world and into the inside world to alert the brain that something's off so that you need to change. Those messengers come through your senses, your eyes, your ears, your sense of smell, your taste, your feeling, your intuition, whatever. So these messages are coming in all the time from the environment and also from the internal environment, alerting your brain when something is right or something is off. That's it. And if something is off, it's a stress. And if there's a stress, the brain will ignite a stress response, which is a physiological response that's mainly driven by adrenaline and cortisol, create physiological changes. Those physiological changes will create symptoms. Those symptoms might be hunger or fatigue or that pressure, whatever it is. And you think, I don't like that feeling. And that motivates you to then go fix it, like shift positions when you're uncomfortable.
Yes.
Or put on something warm when you're cold. Okay. That's how it works. And so the key is to refine your balance. So so in biology, attaining that state of balance, that state of state is called homeostasis. And every living organism is trying to get back into homeostasis. The ability to get back into homeostasis, or the ability to achieve balance or stability through change, is called allostasis. And in layman's term, we call that flow. Okay, the state of flow, of being out of balance, back in balance, out of balance, back in. That's what I'm talking about this piece.
Yes. Yeah.
Right? That would be the ideal. to be in the state of flow. There's a problem, I solve it, I come back into balance. There's a problem, I solve it, I come back into balance. The problem is, and this is where the maladaptive coping comes in, is the problem, I find a way to cope with the problem, but I'm not solving it, which means the stress response stays high, which means all these physiological changes, like an increased heart rate, blood pressure, whatever, are staying high. My vibration's staying low, and I'm getting me more rigid, which is making me less adaptable.
Yes.
So it becomes that. So how do I turn stress to my advantage? Is I learn how to regulate myself. I get my mind into the belief that come what may, I'll figure it out. Because the stress response stays activated because the mind is worried that something isn't manageable. The stress isn't manageable. But if I can change that mindset and get into the mindset that, you know what, this sucks, but I'll figure it out. I've got the resources, somehow come what may, I've got enough, I'll be able to do it. The stress response will stay in check. Then you'll be able to, you can drive the stress response rather than it drives you.
Dr. Eva, you are so brilliant. Let me just say that out loud. Everybody is feverishly writing notes as you're talking. I can imagine them right now
in the book.
around the world. So I highly recommend go check out the book, Resilience for Dummies. You can pre-order it now, and it's due out March 3rd, 2021. And I think imagine for a lot of people who've just gone through a hellacious year last year, and so much is in flux. Not that you need permission from Eva or myself, but give yourself that permission to take this year and really focus on this stuff. Like commit to reading a book, doing a few exercises, making one tiny change today that is leading you towards your actual hope or vision, to help pull yourself up and out of that rigid state that she talks about there. Because I imagine, and I'll be the first to admit, I have certainly been there myself, and that's why I can speak about it. When you get into that rigid state and things look very dark and bleak, and you just feel like, woe is me, or woe is the world, and I can't change, you start to endure all the wrong things. You endure the coping mechanisms, you endure the situation, but no actual change comes about. And I think that this book in particular might be that thing that sparks you, that gives you just a new thought planted in your mind, so you can take one tiny step, one decision out of your 1,000 that you have to make today could be made differently and help you down a different path. So Dr. Eva, I have a few questions I'd like to ask you just as we wrap up here. And again, thank you so much for sharing your wisdom and sharing all of this. It's such good stuff. So
I love it.
My first question is this. What's one book or blog that you're reading these days that's either inspiring you or poking holes and challenging your belief system?
Well, I wanted to mention two different things because, one was sort of on the serious note, like sort of like the challenging of my belief system sort of thing. And, I'm going to mention that, but I really I'm going to talk more about, I have to remember what it's called. I think it's called Death by Civilization.
Yep.
Or is that what it's called? Civilized to Death. That's what it's called. It's by, Christopher Ryan. And it's called Civilized to Death. It's really compelling. It's part of one of the things when you're a coach or you work in the humanitarian field like I do, and you see like so many atrocities happening, you sort of kind of lose faith in humanity, and you think, why am I helping people? They suck. That was sort of when I hit my dark night of the soul. It happened to me a few times, but and what I write about and what I talk about isn't just like a talking head, by the way. It's just not as because it's my profession. It's things I've lived through, and I've worked through them myself, and that's why I teach them. And so in this book is sort of talking about actually the goodness of humans, and how civilization actually has brought out sort of the negativity and a little bit of kind of what we need to do sort of to come back to that state, sort of like how a lot of how what we were taught in history, the Darwinians, is actually a lot of it's false. So it's really it's sort of challenging our mindset and how we see things. And I thought, it's really interesting. And I just wanted to mention the other thing I recommend doing is challenging yourself in a playful way. So when up until about 10 years old, I played from like 6 to 10 or 7 to 10, I played guitar, classical guitar. And then it was a traumatic experience. My guitar teacher had a stroke and died, and I just stopped. I stopped. But I've had my guitar for, I'm 53. So I've had, my guitar for 40 some odd years, 43 years. And I decided I was going to relearn how to play the classical guitar. And it's really hard. I'm like, I don't remember ever reading these notes. And, because of the pandemic, I'm not hiring a teacher right now. So I ordered this book. And Alfred's Teach Yourself to Play Classical Guitar, Everything You Need to Know to Start Playing Classical Guitar Now.
Yes.
It's by Nathaniel Gounod. And it's actually, been quite entertaining. I'm sitting there just kind of playing. So I recommend, get out of your comfort zone, do something creative, jump on, like, what is something I've always wanted to learn, and just go do it. Just go do it. Challenge yourself and go do it. And I did that to myself. I'm like, okay, I'm going to do it.
Brilliant. Those are
really hard.
Two perfect suggestions. We'll put the links in the show notes for both those books and all the resources we talked about today over at the simplifierspodcast.com. Thank you for that. So tell us, who's one person in your network, somebody that you know personally, you just feel is up to brilliant things, and we could shine a spotlight on them. And who knows, maybe one day we'll have them on the podcast.
Well, I want to talk about her because she's also a dear friend, and she's also a Dr. Eva. And that's sort of why I wanted to bring up. So, and it's funny because we met 10 years ago, almost 10 years, a little bit, just a bit over 10 years ago. It would have been 10 years ago, I think, September.
Yep.
Past September, and we met because of a show like this, it was a radio show, a podcast. And this gentleman was interviewing me. It was when my first book, The Love Response, came out. And he said, oh, you know what? I just interviewed another Dr. Eva. You guys need to meet. And she lives in Miami. And so he connected us through email, and we connected. She goes, I'm going to be in Boston this weekend for the coaching meeting, whatever, the International Coaching Federation, whatever, Harvard thing. And I was like, great. Let's have a blind date. And it was like instant love. And we've been friends ever since. And she's a really quite an interesting woman. She's also written several books. She's doing really good in the world, which is why I love her so much. She's a psychiatrist. She's also really about empowering women. And she's done what she's also interested in art. So she's very much involved in the art world. And they've done this wonderful project called the Bold Beauty Project, which is, because her daughter has cerebral palsy. So, and they put her into this beautiful sort of art modelish kind of thing. And they've done this really beautiful project of raising awareness around the beauty of women and people despite, disabilities and that sort of thing. And she's also studied another movement called Be Kinder, where they put a book together, compilation on, so BEKINDR is the name of the book. And it's about finding ways to be kinder in the world. So her name is Dr. Eva Ritvo. And I admire her professionally and also personally. And actually, when we first met, we had a little blog talk radio show called the Dr. Eva Show.
Brilliant.
It was like 10 years ago. So anyway, I adore her. She's just a phenomenal human being.
Love it. Well, we will link her up in the show notes. If anybody's curious about that, Dr. Eva, you can click through and find more information about her projects as well. So I believe gratitude and simplicity go hand in hand. Tell me, what are you grateful for today?
Well, I am grateful for this conversation. I am. I think one of the things that these types of conversations do is they build me up. Right. And the more light I have, the happier I am. Yes. So, I think we all know there's conversations that take our energy away, and there's other conversations that lift us up. So I'm very grateful I've just had at least two of them today. So I told you I was talking to my friend right beforehand. So I feel really grateful about that. I think also in a time of this pandemic, when we are not spending a lot of time with human beings face to face, so having And Zoom can be draining, and to be able to actually supersede that and have conversations where you actually feel uplifted and not drained, I feel really grateful for.
I am grateful too. Yeah, thank you. We will put all your social media links in the show notes as well. So if people want to connect with you online, or you can go to her website, drselhub.com or drselhubcorporate.com. Again, all the links are in the show notes at thesimplifierspodcast.com. So my final question for you today is this, Eva. And again, thank you so much for your time. Someone somewhere in the world is listening to us right now, and she has had one hell of a year this past year. And she is looking down the barrel of the next 10 months or so and going, I don't know if it's going to get any better. What's one thing you could whisper into her ear right now just to encourage her in this moment?
Faith. I'd say have faith. Trust. Trust that you're not alone. Trust that you are loved. Trust that the resources are there. Have faith.
Dr. Eva, thank you so much for your time.
Thank you.